When billionaire CEO Victoria Hale woke up wearing a stranger's flannel shirt in his cramped apartment, she knew her carefully controlled life had just shattered. The exhausted single father who'd rescued her from a rainstorm the night before lay unconscious on his couch. And she was about to discover that sometimes the people who have the least give the most. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour grocery store buzzed like dying wasps overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow across aisles that Ethan Cole knew better than the lines on his own palms. He pushed the industrial mop across the linoleum floor with mechanical precision, his shoulders aching from the double shift that had started 14 hours earlier. The night manager had called in sick again, which meant Ethan would be here until dawn, then catch 2 hours of sleep before getting Ava ready for school. His daughter. The thought of her small face, still soft with the remnants of childhood, kept him moving when his body begged to stop. 8 years old, with her mother's dark curls and her father's stubborn chin. She deserved better than the peeling wallpaper in their studio apartment, better than the secondhand clothes from the church donation bin, better than a father who fell asleep during their bedtime stories because he worked himself to the bone just to keep the lights on. Cole, you good to lock up? The assistant manager, a college kid named Marcus who still smelled like his girlfriend's perfume, poked his head around the corner. I got an exam tomorrow. Yeah, go ahead. Ethan's voice came out rougher than he intended, scraped raw by exhaustion and the cold that had been settling into his chest for the past week. He should see a doctor. He should do a lot of things. But the clinic charged $60 for a visit, and that $60 was the difference between Ava having new shoes or wearing the ones with the sole peeling away from the toe. Marcus disappeared, and Ethan heard the back door slam shut. The silence that followed pressed against his eardrums like water. He finished mopping, stored the equipment in the utility closet, and grabbed his threadbare jacket from the break room. His phone showed 2:47 a.m. If he caught the night bus, he'd be home by 3:30, could sleep until 6, and still have time to make Ava breakfast before her school bus came at 7:15. The October air bit through his jacket the moment he stepped outside. Rain had been threatening all evening, and now it arrived in sheets, turning the empty parking lot into a mirror that reflected the orange sodium lights. Ethan hunched his shoulders and started the 6-block walk to the bus stop, his sneakers squelching through puddles that had already formed in the broken asphalt. He was halfway down Riverside Avenue when he saw the car. A Mercedes sedan, black and sleek as a shark, sat at an awkward angle on the shoulder. Its hazard lights blinked rhythmically, creating small halos in the rain. Ethan's first instinct was to keep walking. Rich people had AAA and comprehensive insurance. They didn't need help from a grocery store janitor who could barely help himself. But then he saw the figure standing beside the driver's door, illuminated by the harsh glow of a cell phone screen. A woman in a business suit, her blonde hair plastered to her skull by the rain, staring at the phone like it had personally betrayed her. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the rigid set of her shoulders, the way she held herself like she was trying to contain something that wanted to explode. He kept walking, made it another 10 steps before his conscience, that stubborn thing his grandmother had beaten into him with Bible verses and homemade switches, made him stop. Damn it, he muttered, then turned around and jogged back toward the Mercedes. The woman looked up sharply as he approached, her hand moving to her purse. Defensive. Smart, given the hour and the isolated location. Easy, Ethan called out, raising his hands. Just saw you were having trouble. You need help? Up close, she looked like she'd been through a war. Mascara smudged beneath ice blue eyes that assessed him with the kind of calculation that made him feel like a balance sheet. Her suit probably cost more than his monthly rent. There was a small cut above her left eyebrow, fresh enough to still be bleeding slightly. Do you have a phone charger? Her voice carried the crisp authority of someone used to giving orders and having them followed. Mine died. I've been stuck here for 40 minutes. No charger, but I can take a look at your car if you want. What happened? She hesitated, and in that pause, Ethan saw something crack in her composure. Just for a second, but it was enough to make her seem human instead of like a magazine cutout. The tire blew. I thought I could call someone, but you know how to change it? I know how to delegate it. A ghost of dark humor crossed her face. Not the same thing. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the rain, the desperate need for sleep, Ethan felt his mouth twitch toward a smile. Pop the trunk. I'll see what you've got. The spare tire was pristine, still had the factory stickers on it. The jack looked like it had never been touched. Ethan knelt in the growing puddle beside the blown tire, rain soaking through his jeans, and got to work. His hands knew the motions from years of keeping his own dying Honda alive. Remove the hubcap, loosen the lug nuts, position the jack, lift, remove, replace, tighten, lower, secure. The woman watched him work, standing close enough to the car to use it as a minimal shelter from the rain. She didn't speak, didn't offer empty platitudes about how grateful she was, just watched with those calculating eyes. "You do this a lot?" she asked finally. "Change tires. Help strangers at 3 a.m. Ethan tightened the last lug nut and stood, his knees popping in protest. "First time, actually. Usually I'm smarter than this." That earned him a real smile, brief but genuine. "I'm Victoria." "Ethan." He wiped his hands on his already soaked jeans. "You're all set. Spare should get you wherever you're going." "Where are you going? At this hour?" "Home. Catching the bus." Victoria looked down the empty street where rain turned the pavement into a river. The bus shelter was 6 blocks away, a dim rectangle of light in the distance. She looked back at Ethan, at his soaked clothes and the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. "Get in the car," she said. "I'm fine." That wasn't a request. The authority was back in her voice, but there was something else beneath it now. Something that might have been concern. "You just spent 20 minutes in the rain fixing my tire. The least I can do is drive you home." Ethan wanted to argue. Pride was about the only thing he had left that didn't have holes in it, but his teeth were starting to chatter, and the thought of standing at the bus stop for another 20 minutes made his bones ache. "All right," he said. "Thanks." The Mercedes interior smelled like leather and expensive perfume. Ethan tried not to drip too much on the pristine seats as he gave Victoria directions to his apartment. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers and the low hum of NPR on the radio. "You work nights?" Victoria asked, her eyes on the road. "Nights, days, whenever they need me. Grocery store over on 5th. "And you're going home to—" "My daughter. She's 8. Ethan leaned his head against the window, watching the city slide past in streaks of neon and shadow. "Her mom and I split up last year. Been just the two of us since." Victoria nodded slowly. "That's a lot." "Yeah." They didn't speak again until Victoria pulled up in front of Ethan's apartment building. The structure was a relic from the 1970s, all crumbling brick and rusted fire escapes. Graffiti decorated the ground floor, and 2 of the street-facing windows were covered with plywood instead of glass. Ethan saw Victoria take it in, her expression carefully neutral. He grabbed the door handle, suddenly desperate to be out of this car, away from the contrast between her world and his. "Thank you for the ride," he said, "and for not reporting your car stolen when a random guy offered to help." "Ethan?" Victoria's voice stopped him halfway out the door. "Thank you, really, for stopping." He nodded, climbed out into the rain, and started toward the building entrance. His keys were in his hand when he heard the car door open behind him. "Wait." He turned. Victoria was standing beside her car, rain already soaking into her ruined suit. "Is there a bathroom I could use? I've been stuck on that road for over an hour." Every instinct in Ethan's body screamed that this was a bad idea. You didn't bring wealthy strangers into your poverty. Didn't let them see the water stains on the ceiling or the gap in the window where winter wind would soon howl through. But the woman had just spent an hour stranded in the rain, and basic human decency won out over shame. "Yeah, okay, come on up." The building's elevator had been broken for 3 months, so they climbed 5 flights of stairs. Ethan's apartment was at the end of a hallway that smelled like cigarette smoke and boiled cabbage. He unlocked 3 separate locks, deadbolt, chain, doorknob, and pushed the door open. The studio was exactly what it looked like. A single room divided by desperation and furniture placement. Ava's twin bed sat in one corner, surrounded by drawings she'd taped to the walls. His couch, rescued from a curb, took up another corner and served as his bed. a kitchenette with a hot plate and a mini fridge, a bathroom the size of a closet, everything clean but worn to the thread, held together by willpower and duct tape. Ava was asleep in her bed, one arm flung over her stuffed rabbit. Mrs. Chen from next door sat in the folding chair by the window, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she worked through a crossword puzzle. "Mr. Cole," she whispered, standing. She was good tonight. Finished her homework, ate her dinner. "Thanks, Mrs. Chen. I appreciate it." Ethan pulled a 20 from his wallet, most of what he'd earned tonight after taxes. "Here." "Oh no, you keep that. Please." He pressed it into her hand. "For your time." Mrs. Chen looked at the 20, then at Ethan's face, and her expression softened into something that made his throat tight. She pocketed the bill, patted his arm, and shuffled toward the door, pausing only to give Victoria a curious glance before disappearing into the hallway. "Bathroom's through there?" Ethan pointed to the narrow door beside the kitchenette. "Towels are clean." Victoria nodded and crossed the small space. Ethan listened to the bathroom door close, then sank onto his couch. The adrenaline that had been keeping him upright for the past 18 hours drained away all at once, leaving him hollow. His head spun. His chest felt tight, each breath requiring conscious effort. He closed his eyes. Just for a second. Just to stop the room from tilting. When Victoria emerged from the bathroom 5 minutes later, Ethan Cole was unconscious. For a moment, Victoria just stared at him. This stranger who had stopped in the rain to help her, who had worked his hands raw changing her tire, who lived in this shoebox of an apartment with peeling wallpaper and a daughter sleeping 10 feet away. His face was pale, his breathing shallow and rapid. When she touched his forehead, his skin burned hot enough to make her pull her hand back. Fever, exhaustion, probably both. She should leave, call him an ambulance, and disappear back into her own life, where problems could be solved with money and delegation and carefully worded emails. But something kept her feet planted on the worn linoleum floor. Maybe it was the drawings taped to the walls. A child's interpretation of a family, 2 figures holding hands beneath a yellow sun. Maybe it was the empty refrigerator she'd glimpsed while using the bathroom, containing nothing but a gallon of milk and half a sandwich wrapped in plastic. Maybe it was the way this man had stopped to help her without asking for anything in return. As if kindness was just something you did instead of a transaction to be negotiated. Victoria Hale had built an empire on calculated risks and decisive action. She stood at the helm of a billion-dollar corporation, made decisions that affected thousands of lives, negotiated with people who would eat her alive if they sensed weakness. She had clawed her way up from nothing, fought for every inch of respect in boardrooms full of men who thought she belonged behind a reception desk instead of at the head of the table. But right now, in this tiny apartment that smelled like cheap laundry detergent and crayons, she had no idea what to do. The logical choice would be to leave. To get back in her car, drive to her penthouse apartment, take a hot shower, and forget this entire night ever happened. But when she looked at Ethan's unconscious form, at the way his daughter slept peacefully just feet away, trusting that her father would be there when she woke up, something in Victoria's chest cracked open. She pulled out her phone. No service in this building, apparently. Of course. She tried Ethan's phone, found it locked, looked around the apartment for a landline and found nothing. Checked his pulse, fast but steady. His forehead was too hot, but he was breathing, and when she lifted his eyelid, his pupil responded to light. Not dying, just pushed way past his limits. Victoria had seen this before, in executives who worked 100-hour weeks and junior analysts who fell asleep at their desks. She'd been this person, back when she was climbing the ladder, when every moment of rest felt like giving ground to the competition. She recognized the signs, the tremor in the hands, the gray pallor beneath the exhaustion, the way the body just said enough and shut down. She found a blanket folded at the end of the couch and spread it over him. Then she went to the kitchenette, where a coffee maker sat on the counter beside a jar of instant coffee and a container of sugar. The clock on the microwave read 4:15 a.m. In a few hours, that little girl would wake up. She'd need breakfast. She'd need her father. Victoria Hale, CEO of Meridian Industries, woman who commanded rooms full of powerful people with a single glance, started making coffee in a stranger's kitchen at 4 a.m. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't think about quarterly earnings or shareholder value or the hostile takeover attempt she'd been fighting for 6 months. She thought about kindness, about the way some people gave even when they had nothing to spare, about how easy it was to forget, in penthouses and boardrooms and first-class flights, that most people lived like this. One missed paycheck from disaster, one emergency from ruin, held together by nothing but determination and love. The coffee finished brewing. Victoria poured herself a cup, then checked on Ethan again. Still unconscious, but his color was better. She sat in the folding chair by the window, the same one Mrs. Chen had occupied, and watched the rain continue to fall outside. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The city woke up in layers, sanitation workers, delivery trucks, the first stirrings of the morning commute. At 5:30, Victoria heard movement. She turned to see Ava sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. The girl froze when she saw Victoria, her hand instinctively reaching for the stuffed rabbit. "Hi," Victoria said softly. "I'm Victoria. I'm a friend of your dad's." Ava's eyes went to the couch, where Ethan still slept. "Is Daddy okay?" "He's fine, just very tired. He helped me last night when my car broke down, and I gave him a ride home." "Oh." Ava processed this, her expression serious in the way children's faces get when they're trying to understand adult situations. "Did he fall asleep again?" Again. The word carried so much weight. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. "Yeah," she said. "He did, but I stayed to make sure he was okay. Is that all right?" Ava nodded slowly, then climbed out of bed. She was wearing pajamas that were too small, the pants stopping several inches above her ankles. She padded across the room to the couch and stood on her tiptoes to kiss her father's forehead, a gesture so tender and practiced that Victoria had to look away. "He works really hard," Ava said, not quite looking at Victoria. "Sometimes he gets too tired." "I can see that. Are you hungry? I can make cereal." This 8-year-old child offering to make breakfast for a stranger because her father couldn't. Victoria stood, set her coffee cup down, and moved to the kitchenette. "How about I make us both something?" she said. "What do you usually have?" Ava climbed onto one of the 2 mismatched stools at the tiny counter. "Cereal, or toast if we have bread. Sometimes Daddy makes eggs, but we're out." Victoria opened the refrigerator and confirmed what she'd seen earlier. Milk, half a sandwich, a stick of butter, and a squeezed bottle of jelly. The freezer held frozen vegetables and a single chicken breast. The cabinet contained cereal, rice, pasta, and a can of tomato sauce. She'd spent more on a single business lunch than this man spent feeding himself and his daughter for a week. "Cereal it is," Victoria said, keeping her voice light. She poured 2 bowls, added milk, and set one in front of Ava. "What grade are you in?" "3rd. I like math the best." Ava ate with careful precision, making sure not to spill. "What do you do?" "I run a company. We make parts for machines." "Like factories?" "Exactly like that. My dad used to work in a factory, before I was born. He says he made car parts." Ava took another spoonful of cereal, her eyes drifting to where Ethan slept. "Then he worked at an office, but he lost that job when Mommy left." The casual way she said it, like she was describing the weather, broke something in Victoria. This child had learned to accept instability as normal, had adapted to a life where her father worked himself unconscious just to keep a roof over their heads. "Your dad seems like a really good person," Victoria said quietly. "He is." Ava's voice carried absolute certainty. "He takes care of me. Even when he's tired, he always makes sure I'm okay first." They ate in silence for a while. Outside, the sky began to lighten, rain giving way to heavy clouds. Victoria checked her watch. 6:15. She needed to go. Needed to get home, shower, change, get to the office. She had a board meeting at 9, a conference call with Tokyo at 11, and approximately 400 unread emails waiting for her attention. But when she looked at Ethan, still sleeping deeply, and at Ava, who was now getting dressed for school with the quiet efficiency of a child who'd learned to be independent too young, Victoria found she couldn't bring herself to leave. At 6:45, Ava emerged from the bathroom wearing jeans and a sweater, her backpack already on her shoulders. She had brushed her hair herself, pulled it back into a ponytail that was slightly crooked but serviceable. "I have to go to the bus stop," she announced. "It's 2 blocks away. Daddy usually walks me, but—" "I'll walk you," Victoria said before she could think about it. Ava looked surprised. You don't have to. I want to. They left Ethan sleeping on the couch, Victoria scribbling a quick note on a scrap of paper and leaving it on the counter. Had to take Ava to school. You collapsed. Stayed to make sure you were okay. Victoria. The morning air was crisp and clean after the rain. Ava walked with purpose, clearly familiar with the route. They passed a corner store where a man was setting up produce displays, a laundromat just opening its doors, a pawn shop with bars on the windows. Daddy says we're going to move soon, Ava said suddenly, to a better place, with more rooms. But he's been saying that for a while. Victoria didn't know what to say to that, so she just listened. I don't mind our apartment, Ava continued. It's small, but it's warm, and Daddy's there. She paused, then added, Mommy lives in a big house now, with her new husband. They have a swimming pool. Do you see her often? Sometimes, but she's usually busy. Ava said it matter-of-factly, but Victoria heard the hurt underneath. She says the apartment makes her sad. That's why she doesn't come anymore. They reached the bus stop where 3 other children already waited with their parents. The parents gave Victoria curious looks. Her expensive suit, now wrinkled and rain-stained, marked her as not from this neighborhood. The bus pulled up, yellow and loud. Ava turned to Victoria, suddenly shy. Thank you for walking me, and for making breakfast, and for staying with Daddy. You're very welcome, Ava. Will you still be there when I get home? The question caught Victoria off guard. She saw the hope in the child's eyes, the way she held her backpack straps tight like she was bracing for disappointment. I don't know, Victoria said honestly, but your dad will be, and he'll be okay. I promise. Ava nodded, then surprised Victoria by hugging her quickly before climbing onto the bus. Victoria watched it pull away, then started the walk back to the apartment, her mind spinning. She had calls to make, meetings to reschedule, an entire company that needed her attention. But when she climbed back up those 5 flights of stairs and let herself into the apartment, when she saw Ethan beginning to stir on the couch, his eyes blinking open in confusion, Victoria Hale made a decision that would change both of their lives. Hey, she said softly, moving to sit on the edge of the couch. How are you feeling? Ethan stared at her like she was a hallucination. You're still here. I'm still here. What time is it? Almost 7:30. Ava's on the bus. I walked her to the stop. He tried to sit up, then sank back with a groan. You didn't have to. I should have. You collapsed, Victoria said gently. You've been pushing yourself too hard. When's the last time you saw a doctor? Can't afford it. The words came out bitter. Can't afford to be sick either, but apparently my body didn't get the memo. Victoria stood and went to the kitchenette, where she poured a glass of water and brought it back to him. Drink this. Then we're going to talk. About what? About the fact that you helped a complete stranger last night without asking for anything in return. About the fact that you're working yourself to death trying to take care of your daughter. About the fact that sometimes people who give deserve to receive. Ethan took the water, drank deeply, then set the glass down and met her eyes. I don't need charity. That's not what I'm offering. Then what are you offering? Victoria sat back down, her hands folded in her lap. In boardrooms, she commanded with authority and confidence. Here, in this tiny apartment that smelled like coffee and exhaustion, she felt uncertain in a way she hadn't experienced in years. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I know that last night, when my tire blew and my phone died and I was stranded in the rain, you stopped to help me. You didn't know who I was. You didn't ask for payment. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped them, even though you were exhausted and soaked and probably should have just gone home to your daughter. Anyone would have done the same. No, Victoria said quietly. They wouldn't have. Most people would have walked right past. But you didn't, and that means something. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Who are you really? I mean, I know your name is Victoria, but Victoria Hale, CEO of Meridian Industries. His eyes widened slightly. The manufacturing company? The one with the big building downtown. That's the one. Jesus. He ran a hand through his hair, then winced. And I made you walk my daughter to the bus stop. I offered, and I'm glad I did, She's a wonderful kid. She's everything. The words came out raw, unguarded. She's the only thing that matters. I'd work 100 double shifts if it meant she had what she needed. I know, Victoria said. I can see that. But Ethan, you can't keep going like this. You're going to burn out completely. What choice do I have? There was no self-pity in his voice, just exhausted pragmatism. I've got bills, rent, food, childcare. I apply for better jobs, but I've got a gap in my resume from when my ex and I were trying to make it work, and nobody wants to hire someone who's been out of their field for 2 years. So I stock shelves and mop floors and take whatever overtime they'll give me, and I hope it's enough. Victoria pulled her phone from her purse, now finally charged from Ava's school-issued charger she'd found earlier. She scrolled through her contacts, found the one she needed, and hit dial. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked. She held up one finger, waiting. Then, "David, it's Victoria. I need you to clear my schedule for today. I don't care about the board meeting, reschedule it. No, everything's fine. I just have something more important to handle. Thank you." She ended the call and looked at Ethan. "Do you have a resume?" "Somewhere. Why?" "Because Meridian Industries is always looking for good people. And I think you might be exactly the kind of person we need." Ethan's face hardened. "I told you, I don't want charity. And I told you, that's not what this is." Victoria leaned forward, her voice firm. "Last night, you solved a problem I couldn't solve myself. You saw what needed to be done, and you did it, efficiently and without complaint. Those are the qualities I look for in employees. So, no, this isn't charity. This is me recognizing talent when I see it." "You don't even know what I used to do." "Then tell me." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then sighed. "I was a logistics coordinator. Managed supply chains, tracked shipments, optimized delivery routes. I was good at it too. But when Ava's mom got pregnant, we decided one of us should stay home, and my job had worse benefits, so I quit. Then we split up, and by the time I tried to get back in, technology had moved on. I couldn't compete with kids fresh out of college who knew all the new systems." Victoria's mind was already working, slotting pieces together. "We have a massive logistics operation. Distribution centers across 3 states, hundreds of daily shipments. We're actually in the middle of an efficiency review because our current system is hemorrhaging money. That's not an entry-level position." "No, it's not. But I'm not offering you entry-level." She pulled up her email on her phone, started typing. "I'm offering you an interview, a real one, with our operations director. You'll have to prove yourself, and if you're not qualified, we won't hire you. But I think you are. And I think you deserve a chance to show what you can do." Ethan stared at her like she'd just offered him the moon. "Why would you do this?" "Because last night you gave me something I couldn't buy with all the money in the world. You gave me your time, your help, your kindness. All I'm doing is returning the favor." She hit send on the email, then looked at him. "The interview is Friday at 10. Our office is downtown. Dress professionally, bring your resume, and be ready to talk about logistics optimization. Can you do that?" He nodded slowly, still looking stunned. Yeah, I can do that." "Good." Victoria stood, suddenly aware of how completely inappropriate her current appearance was. Her suit was a disaster, her hair a mess, her makeup smudged beyond repair. She needed to get home, needed to salvage what was left of her day. But before she left, she pulled a business card from her purse and set it on the counter. "That has my direct line. If anything comes up before Friday, call me." "Victoria." Ethan's voice stopped her at the door. When she turned, he was sitting up now, the blanket pooled around his waist. "Thank you, really, for staying, for Ava, for all of it. Thank you for stopping in the rain." She smiled, and it felt genuine in a way her smiles rarely did these days. "Get some rest, Ethan. You've earned it." She left before he could respond, navigating the 5 flights of stairs and emerging into morning sunlight that had finally broken through the clouds. Her car was still parked where she'd left it, miraculously unmolested despite the neighborhood. She slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and sat for a moment, letting the heat wash over her. Her phone immediately came alive with notifications. 37 missed calls, 63 emails, text messages from her assistant, her board members, her VP of operations. All of them variations on the same theme. "Where are you? Are you okay? We need you." But for the first time in her career, Victoria Hale didn't immediately jump to respond. Instead, she sat in her car outside a rundown apartment building and thought about a man who worked himself unconscious for his daughter, about a little girl who made her own breakfast and walked herself to the bus stop because her father was too exhausted to function, about the way some people gave everything they had and still came up short, not because they weren't trying hard enough, but because the system was rigged against them from the start. She thought about the empire she'd built, the wealth she'd accumulated, the power she wielded, and she wondered, not for the first time but perhaps more seriously than ever before, what any of it was actually worth. Her phone rang. David, her assistant, calling for the fourth time. She answered. "I'm fine. I'll be in the office by noon. Send me the board meeting notes and tell operations I want to talk about our hiring practices for logistics positions. And David, I need you to personally ensure that Ethan Cole's interview on Friday gets priority treatment. He's being considered for senior logistics coordinator." Senior? That's a pretty high level. I know what level it is. Just make it happen. She ended the call and drove toward her penthouse. But her mind stayed in that small apartment where a father and daughter made a life out of nothing but love and determination. And for reasons she couldn't fully articulate, Victoria knew this wasn't the end of her involvement in their story. It was just the beginning. The elevator in Meridian Tower moved with the kind of whisper-quiet efficiency that only came from German engineering and quarterly maintenance contracts. Victoria watched the floor numbers climb, 42, 43, 44, and tried to ignore the way her reflection looked in the polished steel doors. She'd managed a shower and a fresh suit, but there were shadows under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide, and her mind kept drifting back to a cramped apartment 5 miles and 1,000 worlds away. The doors opened on the executive floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like a kingdom spread out for inspection. Her assistant, David Chen, materialized before she'd taken 3 steps, tablet in hand, an expression carefully neutral in the way that meant he was absolutely dying to ask questions. "Welcome back," he said, falling into step beside her. "I rescheduled the board meeting for tomorrow at 9. Tokyo's on hold until 2, and I have about 600 things that need your signature." "Coffee first," Victoria said, heading toward her corner office. "Then signatures. Then you can brief me on whatever crisis everyone thinks is happening. There's also a Mr. Patterson from Silverton Industries waiting in conference room B. He's been here since 8:30, insisting he has a meeting with you." Victoria stopped walking. "I don't have anything scheduled with Silverton." That's what I told him, multiple times. He said, and I quote, "Victoria knows what this is about, and she'll want to take this meeting." The exhaustion that had been hovering at the edges of Victoria's consciousness sharpened into irritation. Marcus Patterson was Silverton's lead counsel, a man with perfectly capped teeth and a talent for making threats sound like friendly advice. If he was here, it meant the hostile takeover attempt she'd been fighting was escalating. "Fine, give me 10 minutes, then send him in." She pushed open her office door, stepped into the familiar sanctuary of leather furniture and modern art, and allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to close her eyes and breathe. Then she opened them, straightened her shoulders, and became the version of herself that people feared. Marcus Patterson entered her office with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. He was 50-ish, silver at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost as much as Ethan's monthly rent. He sat without being invited, crossed his legs, and smiled. "Victoria, you look tired." "Marcus, you look presumptuous." She remained standing, a deliberate power play. "What does Silverton want?" "Straight to business. I've always admired that about you." He pulled a folder from his briefcase, set it on her desk. "My client is prepared to make a very generous offer for Meridian, 40% above current market value. Cash deal, completed within 60 days. Victoria didn't touch the folder. "Meridian isn't for sale." "Everything's for sale at the right price." "Not this." She moved to the window, looked out at the city. "Tell your client that he can take his offer and his hostile takeover attempt and shove both directly up his—" "Careful, Victoria." Marcus's smile never wavered. "We both know Meridian's been struggling, efficiency down 12% over the last quarter. Shareholders are restless. The board's asking questions you don't have good answers for." He paused. "You've built something impressive here, but maybe it's time to let someone with fresh ideas take the wheel." "Fresh ideas meaning gutting the company for parts and selling off the pieces?" meaning maximizing shareholder value. Get out of my office, Marcus. He stood, smoothed his tie. You have until the end of the month to consider. After that, we take our case directly to the shareholders. And between you and me, you don't have the votes to stop us. He paused at the door. Oh, and Victoria? Everyone knows about the board member you lost last week. Senator Morrison's retirement leaves you vulnerable. Just thought you should know we're aware. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Victoria stood at the window for a long moment, watching traffic move like blood cells through the city's arteries. Morrison's retirement had been a blow. He'd been her advocate, the one board member who understood her vision beyond quarterly profits. Without him, she was fighting a war on two fronts, fending off Silverton while trying to convince her own board she knew what she was doing. Her phone buzzed. David's voice came through the intercom. Your 2 o'clock is here, Mr. Reeves from Operations. Victoria pushed thoughts of Marcus Patterson and Silverton Industries into a mental box labeled Later and returned to her desk. The afternoon blurred into a succession of meetings, each one requiring a different version of herself. Strategic Victoria for Operations. Diplomatic Victoria for the conference call with Tokyo. Decisive Victoria for the product development team presentation. By the time her last meeting ended at 6:30, she felt scraped hollow. David appeared in her doorway. Heading out, your car's waiting downstairs whenever you're ready. Oh, and I confirmed Ethan Cole's interview for Friday at 10. Operations wasn't thrilled about the direct referral, but they'll give him a fair shot. Thank you, David. Victoria? He hesitated, unusual for him. Are you okay? You've seemed different today. She considered lying, decided against it. Just tired. It's been a long couple of days. Anything I can help with? No, but I appreciate you asking. After he left, Victoria sat in the gathering darkness of her office and pulled out her phone. She scrolled to her photos, found the one she'd taken that morning of Ava's drawings taped to the apartment wall. Crude stick figures holding hands, a sun with rays like spikes. The kind of art that only mattered to the person who made it and the person who loved them. She thought about calling Ethan, checking if he was feeling better. But what would she say? What right did she have to insert herself into their lives beyond facilitating a job interview? She'd done her good deed, paid forward the kindness he'd shown her. That should be enough. But somehow it wasn't. 3 days passed in the usual chaos of running a billion-dollar company. Victoria attended meetings, fought fires, fended off increasingly aggressive overtures from Silverton Industries. She worked late, went home to her empty penthouse, slept badly, and woke to do it all again. Through it all, she found herself thinking about Ethan and Ava in ways that made no logical sense. Thursday evening, her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Victoria Hale. Ms. Hale, this is Ethan Cole. His voice sounded nervous, formal. I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're probably busy. It's fine. Is everything okay? Yeah, I wanted to thank you again for the interview tomorrow. I've been preparing all week and I realized I never properly expressed how much this opportunity means. Victoria found herself smiling. You don't need to thank me, Ethan. You earned this shot. Just go in tomorrow and show them what you can do. I will. A pause. Ava wanted me to tell you hi. She's been talking about you, about the morning you walked her to the bus stop. Something warm and unfamiliar stirred in Victoria's chest. Tell her hi back and that I hope she's doing well in school. She is. Math test tomorrow. She's nervous but prepared. Another pause, longer this time. Victoria, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really do this? Set up the interview, I mean. I've been trying to figure it out and I keep coming back to the same question. People like you don't usually go this far for people like me. Victoria walked to her penthouse window, looked out at the city lights spreading to the horizon. People like me? You know what I mean. Successful, powerful. The kind of person who has better things to do than remember some random guy who changed a tire. You're not random, Ethan, and you didn't just change a tire. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them, even though it cost you. That's not nothing. That's actually pretty rare. She pressed her palm against the cool glass. I've spent 20 years clawing my way to the top of a very brutal industry. I've made compromises, stepped over people, done things I'm not particularly proud of. all in the name of success. And you know what I realized that night when I was standing in the rain with a flat tire? What? That I'd surrounded myself with people who would have driven right past you. Who would have called AAA and complained about the wait time? Who wouldn't have even noticed you standing there? She paused. You reminded me that there's another way to move through the world. A better way. So really, I should be thanking you. The silence on the other end of the line stretched until Victoria wondered if the connection had dropped. Then Ethan said quietly, I'll see you tomorrow, Victoria. Good luck. After she hung up, Victoria stood at the window for a long time, watching the city breathe. Friday morning arrived with autumn sunlight and nervous energy. Victoria had 3 meetings before 10, but she found herself distracted, checking the time, wondering how Ethan's interview was going. At 10:15, her phone buzzed with a text from David. Operations interviews are running long, Cole's in conference room C. She told herself to stay in her office, to let the process play out without interference. She lasted until 10:40 before giving up and heading to the executive floor's observation area, a small lounge that overlooked the main conference wing. Through the glass wall, she could see into conference room C. Ethan sat across from 3 members of her operations team, including Director of Logistics Jennifer Park, a no-nonsense woman who'd spent 20 years optimizing supply chains and had exactly 0 patience for incompetence. He dressed in a suit that was clearly borrowed. The sleeves were a touch too long, the shoulders slightly too broad, but he sat with straight-backed composure, gesturing as he spoke. On the table between them, Victoria could see printouts and what looked like hand-drawn diagrams. Jennifer was leaning forward, asking questions. Ethan responded, pointing to one of his diagrams. One of the other team members, Craig from Data Analysis, was nodding. The third person, Maria from Quality Control, was taking notes. Victoria watched for another 5 minutes, then forced herself to return to her office. Whatever happened now was out of her hands. At noon, Jennifer Park knocked on her door. Come in. Jennifer entered, closed the door behind her, and stood with her arms crossed. I want to talk about Ethan Cole. Victoria kept her expression neutral. All right. When David told me you wanted us to interview him for senior logistics coordinator, I'll be honest, I was skeptical. Direct referrals from the CEO's office usually mean we're about to hire someone's incompetent nephew. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to something. But this guy? Victoria, he walked in with a complete analysis of our current distribution inefficiencies. He spent the last week reviewing our publicly available shipping data and found optimization opportunities we've been missing for months. Victoria felt something tight in her chest loosen. So you're saying, I'm saying we'd be idiots not to hire him. He's exactly what we need. Jennifer's expression softened slightly. Where did you find him? He found me, or I found him. It's complicated. Well, whoever found who, I'm making him an offer this afternoon. $75,000 to start, full benefits, standard executive package. After Jennifer left, Victoria allowed herself a moment of pure relief. Ethan had done it. He'd proven himself on merit, earned the position without her interference. She wanted to call him, to congratulate him, but she held back. This was his victory. She'd let him have it without making it about her. But at 3 o'clock, her office door flew open without warning, and Ethan Cole stood in the doorway looking like he'd just been hit by lightning. $75,000, he said. They offered me $75,000 a year. David appeared behind him, looking apologetic. I tried to stop him. It's fine, David. Victoria waved him off and the door closed, leaving her alone with Ethan. Congratulations. I heard you impressed them. I don't understand. He moved into the room like he wasn't quite sure the floor would hold him. People don't just get chances like this. Things like this don't happen to people like me. They do when you earn them. Victoria stood, came around her desk. Jennifer Park is one of the toughest evaluators in this company. If she's offering you that position, it's because you deserve it, not because of me, because of you. Ethan sat down heavily in one of her visitor chairs, put his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. Do you know what $75,000 means? I've been making 22. 22,000, working 70 hours a week, barely keeping my head above water. And now you can breathe, Victoria finished softly. Now I can buy Ava new shoes, real ones, not from the thrift store. I can get us a 2-bedroom apartment. I can take her to the doctor when she's sick instead of hoping it goes away on its own. I can. His voice broke. I'm sorry. This is completely unprofessional. Ethan, look at me. She waited until he met her eyes. This isn't unprofessional. This is human, and there's nothing wrong with that. He wiped his eyes, laughed shakily. I'm supposed to start Monday. Jennifer said I'd need to fill out paperwork, get set up with IT, meet the team. It's all happening so fast. That's how we operate. When we find good people, we don't waste time. Ethan stood, straightened his borrowed suit. I need to pick up Ava from school. Tell her. She's not going to believe it. I bet she will. She seems like a smart kid. She is. Smarter than me, probably. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Victoria, I know you said this was all me, that I earned it, but we both know you're the reason I got the interview in the first place. So thank you for seeing something in me worth taking a chance on. You're welcome. And Ethan, I meant what I said. You earned this. After he left, Victoria returned to her desk and tried to focus on the contract review waiting for her attention. But she couldn't stop smiling. David appeared in her doorway 10 minutes later. Well, that was unexpected. Want to tell me what's going on? Just hired a good person for an important position. Uh-huh. And this good person happens to be someone you personally referred who just burst into your office crying happy tears? Victoria looked at her assistant, at the knowing expression on his face, and decided she didn't owe him an explanation. He changed my tire in the rain. I returned the favor. That's the most Victoria Hale thing I've ever heard. Get back to work, David. He grinned and disappeared. The following Monday, Victoria arrived at the office to find Ethan Cole in her reception area, looking slightly overwhelmed in a new suit that actually fit. He was clutching a folder of what she assumed was new employee paperwork and trying not to stare too obviously at the expensive art on the walls. First day? She asked, approaching him. He jumped slightly. Victoria. Yeah, I'm just waiting for Jennifer. She's supposed to give me the tour. How does it feel? Terrifying. Amazing. Both. He smiled and it transformed his entire face. I signed a lease on Saturday. 2-bedroom place, not far from Ava's school. We move in next weekend. She's already planning how to decorate her room. That's wonderful, Ethan. It's because of you. It's because of you, Victoria corrected. I opened a door. You walked through it. Jennifer appeared, brisk and efficient. Cole, you ready? We've got a full day ahead of us. Ethan followed her toward the elevators, but he looked back once, caught Victoria's eye, and mouthed, "Thank you." She nodded, then returned to her office, where a stack of acquisition proposals and the lingering threat of Silverton Industries waited for her attention. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria told herself that her involvement in Ethan Cole's life was finished. She'd helped him when he needed it, he'd gotten the job, and now they'd exist in separate orbits within the same company. Professional, clean, appropriate. But the universe, or fate, or simple coincidence had other plans. It started small. Running into each other in the executive cafeteria, brief conversations in the elevator, a passing mention from Jennifer that Ethan's preliminary efficiency recommendations were already showing promise. Then, 3 weeks after he started, Victoria found herself in a late-night emergency meeting about the Silverton situation. The hostile takeover attempt had escalated. They'd secured enough shareholder proxies to force a special board vote. Marcus Patterson was circling like a shark, and Victoria's position was becoming increasingly precarious. She left the meeting at 10:30, exhausted and angry, and found Ethan working late in his new office on the 12th floor. The lights were on, and through the glass doors she could see him staring at multiple monitors, scribbling notes. She knocked. He looked up, surprised. "Victoria, what are you doing down here?" "Long meeting. Saw your light on." She leaned against the doorframe. "You know you don't have to work this late, right? You've got a daughter to get home to." "Mrs. Chen's staying with Ava tonight. I wanted to finish this analysis." He gestured to his screens. "I've been looking at the efficiency problems Jennifer mentioned, and I think I found something significant." Despite her exhaustion, curiosity got the better of her. "Show me." What followed was 20 minutes of Ethan explaining distribution route optimization, warehouse placement strategy, and predictive inventory modeling with the kind of passion that came from truly understanding a system. He'd found inefficiencies in their current setup that were costing the company millions annually, and he'd developed a proposal to fix them. "This is impressive," Victoria said when he finished. "Really impressive. When are you presenting it to Jennifer?" "I was planning to refine it more first. I've only been here 3 weeks. I don't want to overstep." "Ethan, this is exactly the kind of initiative we hire people for. Don't wait. Show Jennifer tomorrow." She paused. "Actually, I want to be there when you do. This could be the edge we need." "Edge for what?" Victoria hesitated. She shouldn't involve a new employee in executive-level corporate warfare. But looking at Ethan's analysis, at the potential cost savings and efficiency gains, she saw something that could strengthen her position against Silverton's claims of incompetent leadership. "We're dealing with a hostile takeover attempt," she said. "Another company trying to buy Meridian out from under me. One of their main arguments is that our operations are inefficient and losing money. Your analysis proves otherwise. It shows we can turn things around without outside intervention." Ethan processed this. "You want to use my work to fight them?" "Only if you're comfortable with it. This is your analysis, your work. I won't take credit for it." He sat back in his chair, thinking. Then he said, "When I was standing in the rain changing your tire, did you know who I was? Did you have any idea that I might be useful to you someday?" "No, I had no idea who you were." "Then you helped me because it was the right thing to do." "Yes." "So this is me doing the same thing, using what I have to help someone who helped me." He pulled up a presentation template on his computer. "When's the board meeting?" "Next Tuesday." "Then I'd better get to work." They spent the next 2 hours refining his analysis, turning raw data into a compelling narrative. Victoria contributed strategic framing while Ethan handled the technical details. Somewhere around midnight, they ordered food from the executive kitchen, and over sandwiches and coffee, they talked about more than just work. Ethan told her about Ava's recent parent-teacher conference, how her math grades had improved since they'd moved to the new apartment, how she was finally making friends at school. Victoria found herself talking about the early years of Meridian, when she'd worked 100-hour weeks and slept on her office couch, burning through every relationship in her life in pursuit of success. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked. "The sacrifices you made?" Victoria considered the question. "I don't know. I built something real, something that employs thousands of people and provides value. But I also wake up alone in a penthouse, and the only person who calls me outside of work is my assistant checking my schedule." "That sounds lonely." "It is, but it was a choice I made, and I can't complain about the consequences." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know what Ava said when I told her about the job? She said, 'The lady with the nice smile helped us.' She was talking about you." Victoria felt something catch in her throat. "I didn't do that much." "You changed our lives. Don't minimize that." At 1 in the morning, they finally called it a night. Ethan gathered his things, shut down his computer, and they walked to the parking garage together. Her Mercedes and his newly acquired used Honda sat on the same level, several spaces apart. "Thank you for staying late," Victoria said. "This presentation could make a real difference. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make a difference." Ethan unlocked his car, then turned back. "Victoria, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Are you happy?" The question caught her completely off guard. "What?" "Happy. With your life, with all of this." He gestured vaguely at the executive parking level, at the building towering above them. "Because from the outside it looks like you have everything. But tonight, working with you, I kept thinking that you seem lonely. And I know it's not my place to say that, but Ava's been asking if you might want to come to dinner sometime, and I've been trying to figure out if that would be completely inappropriate or—" "I'd like that," Victoria said, surprising herself. "Dinner with you and Ava. I'd really like that." Ethan smiled, the kind of genuine expression that seemed to be his default. "This weekend? Nothing fancy, just pasta and whatever vegetable Ava agrees to eat. But it would mean a lot to her, to both of us. Text me the details." "I will." Victoria watched him drive away, then sat in her car for a long moment before starting the engine. She'd just accepted a dinner invitation from an employee, which was probably 100 kinds of inappropriate. But as she navigated the empty streets toward her empty penthouse, she found she didn't care. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Victoria Hale had something to look forward to that had nothing to do with quarterly earnings or shareholder value. She had dinner with a family that had become, somehow, unexpectedly important to her. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made the city feel almost forgiving. Victoria stood in front of her closet at 4 in the afternoon, staring at rows of designer suits and cocktail dresses, like they were written in a language she'd forgotten how to read. What did one wear to dinner with a single father and his 8-year-old daughter in their modest 2-bedroom apartment? She settled on jeans, expensive ones, but still jeans, and a cashmere sweater. Casual, approachable. The kind of thing a normal person might wear to a casual dinner with friends. Except Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd had casual dinner with friends. Business dinners, yes. Charity galas. Constantly. But sitting around a table eating pasta with people who actually wanted her there, not her checkbook or her connections, that was foreign territory. Ethan had texted her the address the day before, along with a message that made her smile. Ava's been cleaning her room for 2 hours. I think she's more nervous than you are. Victoria grabbed a bottle of wine from her collection. Not too expensive, she didn't want to be ostentatious, and headed down to her car. The drive took her through neighborhoods that shifted like geological layers, each one a little less polished than the last, until she pulled up in front of a modest apartment complex in a part of town where kids played basketball in parking lots and neighbors actually knew each other's names. The building was newer than Ethan's old place, with fresh paint and landscaping that suggested someone actually cared about maintenance. Victoria found apartment 2C and knocked, her heart doing something strange and fluttery that she refused to acknowledge as nervousness. Ethan opened the door wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, his feet bare, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Victoria, come in, please. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomato sauce. It was small but bright, with afternoon sunlight streaming through clean windows. Ava's drawings covered one wall, more sophisticated now, showing stick figures that had evolved into actual proportions. A small dining table was set for 3, mismatched plates that somehow looked intentional rather than desperate. Ava, Ethan called. Victoria's here. Ava emerged from what must have been her bedroom, wearing a dress that was probably meant for church and an expression of pure concentration. Hi, Victoria. Do you like spaghetti? Daddy said you probably do, but I wanted to make sure because if you don't, we have chicken nuggets. But those are supposed to be for my lunch. But Daddy said we could use them if we needed to because this is important. The entire speech came out in one breathless rush. Victoria found herself smiling, genuinely and without effort. I love spaghetti, and you look very pretty. Ava beamed. Thank you. I cleaned my room. Do you want to see it? Ava, let Victoria breathe for a second, Ethan said, but he was smiling too. We just started. It's okay, Victoria said. I'd love to see your room. Ava's room was a shrine to childhood wonder, books stacked on a secondhand shelf, a small desk where homework papers sat in neat piles, more drawings, these ones showing horses and castles, and what looked like a family portrait, 2 adults and a child, holding hands beneath an oversized sun. That's us, Ava said, pointing to the drawing. That's Daddy, and that's me, and that's you. Victoria's breath caught. You drew me? Yeah, because you're our friend, and friends are like family, right? Something in Victoria's chest cracked open. She knelt down to Ava's eye level. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time. Really? But you're so pretty and smart. I bet people say nice things to you all the time. They say things, but they're usually not as nice as what you just said. Victoria stood, trying to compose herself. Thank you for including me in your picture. They returned to the living room, where Ethan was pulling garlic bread from a small countertop oven. He glanced at Victoria, seemed to notice something in her expression, and mouthed, You okay? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Ava talked nonstop about school, about her best friend Emma, who had a hamster named Professor Whiskers, about her math teacher who gave out stickers for good work. Ethan interjected with gentle corrections and proud father comments. Victoria found herself laughing more than she had in months, drawn into their rhythm like a dancer learning new steps. So Victoria, Ava said, twirling spaghetti on her fork with intense concentration. Do you have kids? Ava, Ethan warned. It's okay, Victoria said. No, I don't have kids. I never had time, I guess. I was always too busy with work. That's sad, Ava said matter-of-factly. Kids are really fun. You should get some. It doesn't quite work that way, sweetheart. Why not? Daddy says you're the boss of a whole company. Can't you just boss someone into giving you kids? Ethan covered his face with his hands. I apologize. We're working on the concept of appropriate dinner conversation. Victoria laughed. It's fine. And Ava, you're right that kids seem fun, especially smart ones like you. I got an A on my math test, Ava announced. The one I was nervous about. Miss Peterson said I showed excellent problem-solving skills. That's wonderful. I bet your dad is very proud. He cried a little when I showed him, Ava said, completely serious. I did not cry, Ethan protested. You did. I saw the tears. Those were allergies. We don't have allergies, Daddy. Victoria watched them banter, this easy affection that filled the small apartment like warmth from a fire. This was what she'd missed, she realized. Not just family, but connection. The kind of relationship where people knew you well enough to call you on your lies about crying over math tests. After dinner, Ava insisted on showing Victoria her homework while Ethan cleaned up. They sat at the small desk in Ava's room, going through multiplication tables and reading comprehension worksheets. Victoria found herself genuinely engaged, impressed by the child's quick mind and careful thinking. Victoria, Ava said suddenly, looking up from a word problem about trains traveling at different speeds. Are you and Daddy going to get married? Victoria nearly choked. What? No, we're just friends, Ava. Oh. Ava looked disappointed. Because I think you'd be good together. You make him smile the real way, not the tired way he used to smile. The real way? Yeah, like when he's actually happy, not just pretending for me. Ava went back to her homework like she hadn't just dropped a bomb into the conversation. I want him to be happy. He works really hard to take care of me. He deserves to have someone take care of him too. Victoria didn't know how to respond to that, this 8-year-old wisdom wrapped in innocence. Your dad is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him too, and now we have you, which makes us even luckier. When they returned to the living room, Ethan had finished cleaning and was making coffee. Ava settled on the couch with a book, and Ethan gestured for Victoria to join him in the small kitchen area. I apologize for the interrogation, he said quietly. She's been on a kick lately about families and relationships. I think it's because Emma's mom just got remarried. It's fine. She's sweet. She likes you. A lot. Ethan poured coffee into 2 mugs. I hope this wasn't too overwhelming. I know you're used to fancy restaurants and business dinners. Ethan, this was perfect, really. I can't remember the last time I had this much fun. He studied her face, seemed to find what he was looking for, and smiled. Good. Because Ava's already planning the next one. Apparently we're making pizza from scratch. They moved to the couch, sitting on either side of Ava, who had fallen into that absorbed trance that children get when reading. Victoria sipped her coffee and felt something unfamiliar settle over her. Contentment. Not the satisfaction of closing a deal or the rush of victory in a boardroom battle, but simple, quiet happiness. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. You should probably check that, Ethan said. Might be important. Victoria pulled out her phone and felt the contentment evaporate. 7 missed calls from David, 12 texts, 2 voicemails. The most recent text read, Urgent. Silverton leaked to the press. Call me now. I'm sorry, she said, standing. I have to take this. Work emergency. She stepped into the hallway and called David back. He answered on the first ring. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for an hour. I was having dinner. What happened? Silverton Industries released a statement to the financial press. They're going public with the takeover attempt, painting Meridian as a failing company that needs new leadership. The Wall Street Journal is running a piece tomorrow morning. Bloomberg's already got it online. Victoria closed her eyes, leaned against the hallway wall. What's the board saying? They want an emergency meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Victoria, this is bad. Patterson's been feeding reporters cherry-picked data that makes our efficiency numbers look worse than they are. We need to respond fast. Set up the meeting. I'll be there. She paused. And David, pull together everything we have on operational improvements. I want concrete numbers, recent wins, anything that contradicts their narrative. On it. Are you okay? I'm fine. I'll see you tomorrow. She ended the call and stood in the silent hallway for a long moment, feeling the weight of her two worlds colliding. Behind that apartment door was warmth and laughter, and a child who drew her into family portraits. Out here was corporate warfare and hostile takeovers, and the company she'd spent 2 decades building. When she went back inside, Ethan took one look at her face and knew. What happened? The takeover attempt went public. It's going to be all over the news tomorrow. Victoria grabbed her purse, tried to smile at Ava. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I have to go. Work emergency. Ava looked crushed. But you just got here. I know, and I'm sorry, but I promise we'll do this again soon, okay? Cross your heart? Victoria made the gesture. Cross my heart. Ethan walked her to the door, his expression concerned. Is there anything I can do? Actually, yes. That presentation we worked on, I need it ready for a board meeting tomorrow at 9. Can you have it polished and sent to me by tonight? Of course. Victoria, are you going to be okay? She wanted to say yes, to maintain the professional facade, but something about the way he looked at her with genuine concern instead of calculating interest made her honest. I don't know. They're trying to take everything I've built, and the worst part is, some of their criticisms are valid. We have been struggling with efficiency. Our numbers could be better. Then we show them they're about to get better. We show them your plan. Ethan touched her arm, brief and gentle. You're not alone in this fight, Victoria. You've got a whole company of people who believe in you, including me. The words were simple, but they steadied something in her. Thank you, for dinner, for everything. Anytime. And Victoria, whatever happens tomorrow, remember that your worth isn't measured in quarterly earnings or stock prices. You're valuable because of who you are, not what you've built. Victoria drove home through city streets that blurred slightly, though she refused to acknowledge why. She spent the rest of the evening preparing for war, reading through analyst reports and financial projections, building her defense. Ethan's presentation arrived at 11 p.m., polished and professional, with a note. You've got this. E. The emergency board meeting started exactly at 9 a.m. in Meridian's largest conference room. The 10 board members sat around the mahogany table like judges at a trial, their expressions ranging from concerned to hostile. Victoria stood at the head of the table, her presentation loaded and ready, her armor firmly in place. I assume you've all seen the news, she began. Silverton Industries has decided to wage their takeover attempt in the press as well as the boardroom. Their narrative is simple. Meridian is failing, I'm incompetent, and they can do better. Can you blame them? This came from Gerald Winters, a board member who'd been skeptical of Victoria from the start. Our efficiency numbers are down 12%. Costs are up. Shareholders are unhappy. Our efficiency numbers were down, Victoria corrected. Past tense. Because 3 weeks ago, we hired someone who's been finding solutions everyone else missed. She clicked to the first slide of Ethan's presentation. This is a comprehensive analysis of our distribution network, identifying inefficiencies and providing concrete solutions. Implementation of these recommendations will reduce costs by 18% and improve delivery times by 23%. She walked them through the analysis, watching their faces shift from skeptical to interested. The numbers were undeniable. Ethan had found millions in savings hiding in plain sight. Who prepared this? Asked Margaret Chen, one of Victoria's few allies on the board. Ethan Cole, our new senior logistics coordinator. New as in recently promoted? Gerald asked. New as in hired a month ago. Victoria met his gaze steadily. Because I'm always looking for talent, regardless of where it comes from. And I'm willing to bet that Silverton doesn't have anyone on their team who could produce analysis this thorough. The discussion continued for another hour, arguments flying back and forth about shareholder value and leadership, and whether Victoria's vision for Meridian was still viable. But something had shifted. The presentation had given her allies ammunition, and even her critics had to acknowledge the quality of the work. Finally, Margaret spoke up. I move that we issue a public statement rejecting Silverton's characterization of Meridian as a failing company. We provide this efficiency analysis to the financial press, demonstrate that we have concrete plans for improvement, and make it clear that this board stands behind our current leadership. Second, said Thomas Rodriguez, another supporter. The vote was 7-3 in Victoria's favor. Not unanimous, but enough. After the meeting ended, Victoria returned to her office and collapsed into her chair. She'd won this round, but the war was far from over. Silverton would keep pushing, keep looking for weaknesses. She needed to stay ahead of them, needed to prove that Meridian could evolve without being consumed. Her phone rang. Ethan. I saw the news, he said without preamble. The company issued a statement. How did it go? We survived. Your presentation made the difference. Our presentation? We worked on it together. Still, you did the heavy lifting. I just put it in front of the right people. Victoria swiveled her chair to look out at the city. Thank you, Ethan. Really. You're welcome. And Victoria? Ava wanted me to tell you that she saved you a piece of garlic bread. She wrapped it in foil and everything, said you didn't eat enough at dinner. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, completely inappropriate for a CEO who'd just survived a board coup attempt. Tell her thank you, and that I'll come back for the pizza night. She'll hold you to that. After they hung up, Victoria sat in her office and thought about the strange turn her life had taken. A month ago, her world had been entirely contained within these glass walls and mahogany boardrooms. Now she had a child worrying about whether she ate enough garlic bread, and a man who looked at her like she was more than just a title and a net worth. The following week passed in a blur of damage control and strategic planning. Victoria did interviews with financial press, emphasizing Meridian's improvement initiatives. She met with major shareholders, reassuring them that the company was in good hands. She worked 18-hour days, fell into bed exhausted, and woke to do it again. But she also made time for a lunch with Ethan in the executive cafeteria, where they talked about Ava's upcoming school play and his ideas for further distribution improvements. She found herself texting him updates about her day, small things that had nothing to do with work. He responded with stories about Ava's latest adventures and pictures that made her smile during board meetings. It was unprofessional, probably inappropriate, and completely unlike anything Victoria had ever allowed herself before. But she couldn't seem to stop. Thursday evening, she stayed late finishing a presentation for the shareholders' meeting. The building was mostly empty, just security and a few workaholics scattered across 40 floors. Victoria was deep in revisions when her office door opened and Ethan walked in carrying 2 containers of Thai food. You missed dinner, he said. Again, so I brought dinner to you. Victoria stared at him. How did you know I was still here? I called David. He said you've been here until midnight every night this week. Ethan set the food on her desk, pulled up a chair. You can't keep doing this to yourself. I don't have a choice. Silverton's still circling, shareholders are nervous, and I need to prove— You've already proven it, Ethan interrupted gently. The board voted in your favor. The press is reporting on the efficiency improvements. Stock price has stabilized. You won, Victoria, but you're still fighting like you're about to lose everything. Because I might be. One wrong move, one bad quarter, and they'll be back. Stronger, more aggressive. So you're going to work yourself to death to prevent a threat that might never materialize? He opened one of the containers, passed her a fork. Eat. Then tell me what's really going on. Victoria took the food mechanically, realized she was starving, and started eating. Ethan did the same, patient and quiet, giving her space to think. I'm scared, she said finally. I built this company from nothing, fought for every inch of respect, every dollar of investment. I sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of a personal life, and now someone wants to take it away. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to stop them. Victoria, look at me. Ethan waited until she met his eyes. You are one of the strongest people I've ever met. You saw someone in trouble and helped them without hesitation. You gave me a chance when most people would have driven right past. You walked Ava to the bus stop and made her breakfast, and you came to dinner even though it probably terrified you. That's not weakness. That's courage. That's different. That's personal, not professional. Is it? Because the way I see it, you bring the same integrity to everything you do. Victoria set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone for different reasons. When did you get so wise? I had a lot of time to think while I was mopping floors at 2 in the morning. Gives you perspective. He paused. Can I tell you something? Of course. That night when you stayed in my apartment, when I woke up and saw you there, I thought I was hallucinating. Rich people don't do things like that. They don't stay to make sure some random janitor is okay. They don't walk 8-year-olds to bus stops. They definitely don't sit on a couch at 4 in the morning just to make sure someone's still breathing. I couldn't just leave you there. Most people could, most people would, but you didn't, and that told me everything I needed to know about who you are. Ethan leaned forward. You're not going to lose this company, Victoria, because you're not the kind of person who quits. But you need to stop treating yourself like you're expendable, because you're not. Not to Meridian, not to your employees, and not to me and Ava. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that Victoria wasn't quite ready to examine. She stood abruptly, walked to the window, tried to compose herself. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Do what? Balance it all. Care about people and protect the company. Let myself be vulnerable without losing the edge that got me here. I've spent 20 years being hard, being ruthless when necessary. Now you're asking me to be soft. I'm not asking you to be anything you're not already, Ethan said, coming to stand beside her at the window. I'm just asking you to stop hiding the parts of yourself that you think are weaknesses. Your compassion, your kindness, the fact that you care so much, it hurts. He paused. Those aren't weaknesses, Victoria. They're your greatest strengths. And if Silverton Industries can't see that, then they don't deserve to own this company. Victoria turned to face him, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she let someone see her completely. Not CEO Victoria, not boardroom Victoria, but the woman underneath who was tired and scared and desperately trying to hold everything together. Thank you, she whispered, for the food, for the pep talk, for being here. That's what friends do, Ethan said simply. But as they stood there in the darkened office, the city lights spreading out below them like fallen stars, both of them knew it had become something more than friendship. Neither of them was quite ready to name it yet. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and charged at the same time. Victoria became acutely aware of how close Ethan was standing, how she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, how his presence seemed to fill the space in a way that had nothing to do with physical size and everything to do with the way he made her feel seen. Her phone shattered the moment, buzzing insistently on her desk. David's name flashed across the screen. She almost didn't answer, but habit and responsibility won out. Yes, David? Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. Silverton just filed an SEC complaint alleging financial misreporting. They're claiming we've been hiding operational losses in subsidiary accounting. It's complete fabrication, but it's going to require a formal response. Victoria felt the familiar weight settle back onto her shoulders. Send me everything. I'll review it tonight. Victoria, it's almost 9. This can wait until... Send it now, please. She hung up and found Ethan watching her with an expression that was equal parts concern and frustration. You're not going to stop, are you? He said. I can't. Not when they're making moves like this. Then let me help. I might not understand SEC complaints, but I can keep you company. Make sure you eat, keep you from working yourself into the ground. He paused. Unless you want me to go. Victoria should have said yes, should have maintained professional boundaries, sent him home to his daughter, handled this crisis the way she'd handled every other crisis in her career, alone and armored. But the thought of returning to her empty penthouse, of spending another night drowning in legal documents with no one to talk to except her own anxiety, felt suddenly unbearable. Stay, she said. Please. They worked through the night, Victoria reviewing Silverton's allegations, while Ethan researched precedents and made coffee runs to the executive kitchen. Around midnight, he ordered more food. At 2 a.m., when Victoria's eyes started to blur from reading financial disclosures, he suggested a walk around the building to clear her head. They took the stairs down 45 floors and walked through the silent lobby, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. The security guard, a man named James who'd worked nights for 15 years, nodded at them with the knowing look of someone who'd seen countless executives burning midnight oil. She's been here every night this week, James said to Ethan, as if Victoria wasn't standing right there. You make sure she gets some sleep eventually. I'm working on it, Ethan replied. They stepped outside into the November cold. The city at 2 in the morning was a different creature, quieter, stripped of pretense, showing its bones. Street cleaners worked their routes, a few bars still glowed with life, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed its lonely song. I used to love this time of night, Victoria said, wrapping her arms around herself against the chill. When I was first starting Meridian, I'd work until dawn regularly. The city felt like it belonged to me, like I was the only person awake and fighting for something. And now? Now it just feels lonely. She looked up at the Meridian Tower, at the lit windows marking other insomniacs and workaholics. I used to think that was the price of success. That loneliness was just what happened when you chose ambition over everything else. But lately, I've been wondering if I made the wrong choice. Ethan was quiet for a moment, his breath making small clouds in the cold air. My ex-wife used to say I was too soft, that I cared too much about doing the right thing instead of doing the profitable thing. She wanted someone ambitious, someone climbing ladders and making connections. When I chose to stay home with Ava, she saw it as giving up, as settling for less. That's not settling. That's choosing what matters. That's what I thought too. But it cost me my marriage, my career, everything I'd built. For a long time, I wondered if she was right, if caring about people more than profit made me weak. He turned to face Victoria. Then I met you, and I realized something. You care about people too. You helped me when you didn't have to. You gave me a chance when most people in your position wouldn't have. And you're one of the strongest people I know. So maybe caring isn't weakness. Maybe it's just a different kind of strength. Victoria felt something shift inside her, like a door opening in a room she'd kept locked for years. I don't feel strong right now. I feel like I'm barely holding on. You're holding on because you care. About Meridian, about your employees, about doing things the right way. That's not weakness, Victoria. That's integrity. And it's why you're going to win this fight. How can you be so sure? Because Silverton's fighting for profit. You're fighting for people. And in my experience, people will always beat profit in the long run. He smiled slightly. Besides, you've got me now. And I'm annoyingly persistent. Victoria laughed despite herself, the sound surprising in the quiet street. Yes, you are. They walked back inside, rode the elevator up in comfortable silence, and returned to the war room of Victoria's office. By 4 a.m., they'd drafted a comprehensive response to Silverton's allegations, documented every financial decision they were questioning, and prepared a counter-narrative that painted Silverton as desperate and grasping at straws. We should probably send this to legal before we submit it, Victoria said, stifling a yawn. We should probably sleep before we do anything else, Ethan countered. When's the last time you went home? Victoria tried to remember and couldn't. Tuesday, maybe? Victoria, it's Friday morning. Is it? She looked at her computer clock, genuinely surprised. I thought it was Thursday. Ethan stood, walked around her desk, and gently but firmly closed her laptop. That's it. I'm driving you home. I can drive myself. When's the last time you slept? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Right. Come on. I'll get David to send a car for your Mercedes tomorrow. He grabbed her coat from the hook by the door, held it out for her. Don't argue. You're exhausted, and I'm not letting you get behind the wheel of a car in this state. Victoria wanted to protest, but the truth was, she could barely keep her eyes open. She let Ethan help her into her coat, grabbed her purse, and followed him to the elevator. In the parking garage, his Honda looked humble next to the sleek German sedans and Italian sports cars, but Victoria had never been more grateful to slide into a passenger seat. Address? Ethan asked, starting the engine. She gave it to him, then leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes. The city slid past in a blur of lights and shadows. She was dimly aware of Ethan's presence, solid and reassuring, aware of the low music he'd put on, something classical and soothing. Thank you, she murmured, for staying, for all of it. You're welcome. Now sleep. I'll wake you when we get there. Victoria meant to stay awake, meant to give him directions, but exhaustion pulled her under like a tide. She woke to Ethan's gentle hand on her shoulder, his voice soft in the underground parking garage of her building. We're here. Can you make it upstairs, or should I help you? Victoria blinked, trying to orient herself. I'm fine, I think. What time is it? Almost 5. You slept the whole drive. He helped her out of the car, waited while she found her building key card. Are you sure you're okay? Because I can come up, make sure you actually make it to bed instead of just collapsing on your couch. The offer was practical, sensible, and completely inappropriate for an employee to make to his CEO. Victoria should have declined, sent him home, maintained the boundaries that had already blurred beyond recognition. Instead, she heard herself say, "Okay." They rode the elevator to the penthouse in silence. Victoria's exhaustion made everything feel slightly unreal, like she was moving through a dream. She let them into her apartment, barely registering Ethan's quiet intake of breath at the panoramic windows and expensive furnishings. "Nice place," he said softly. "It's just a place." Victoria dropped her purse on the entry table, shrugged out of her coat. "I'm not here enough for it to be more than that." She led him through the open concept living space to the kitchen, where she started making coffee out of pure habit. Ethan gently took the coffee pot from her hands. "No more coffee. You need sleep, not caffeine." He opened her refrigerator, found the same thing he'd found in his old apartment. Almost nothing. A bottle of white wine, some takeout containers, eggs that were probably expired. "When's the last time you went grocery shopping?" "I don't know. I usually just order in." Ethan closed the refrigerator, turned to face her with an expression that was part exasperation, part concern. "Victoria, you can't keep living like this. You're running on fumes." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're exhausted and stressed and barely eating." He moved closer, his voice gentle. "Let me help you, please." Victoria felt something break inside her, all the carefully maintained walls crumbling under the weight of his genuine concern. "I don't know how to let people help me. I've been doing everything alone for so long, I don't remember how to do it any other way." "Then start small. Go to bed. Actually sleep. Let someone else worry about Silverton and the SEC and board meetings for a few hours." Ethan took her hand, squeezed gently. "Can you do that? For me?" She nodded, too tired to argue anymore. Ethan walked her to her bedroom, waited while she grabbed pajamas from her dresser. When she emerged from the bathroom, he'd pulled back the covers on her bed and opened the blackout curtains just enough to let in the first hints of dawn. "Sleep," he said. "I'll lock up on my way out." "Ethan?" Victoria caught his arm as he turned to leave. "Thank you for everything, for being here, for caring." "That's what friends do," he said, echoing his words from before. But the way he looked at her, the tenderness in his expression, spoke of something deeper than friendship. Victoria climbed into bed, felt the luxury sheets that suddenly seemed meaningless, and let her eyes close. She heard Ethan's footsteps moving away, heard the soft click of her apartment door closing. She should have felt alone, the way she always felt in this too-big apartment. Instead, she felt cared for in a way that made her chest ache. She slept for 12 hours straight. When she woke, the sun was setting, painting her bedroom in shades of gold and amber. Her phone showed dozens of missed calls and messages, but there was one text that made her smile. "Ava wants to know if you're still coming to her school play next week. She's playing a tree. Apparently it's a very important tree." "E." Victoria typed back, "Wouldn't miss it for the world." The response came almost immediately. "She's going to be thrilled. Also, I left some groceries in your fridge, real food, not just wine and questionable takeout. You're welcome." Victoria went to the kitchen and found her refrigerator stocked with essentials: eggs, milk, bread, fresh vegetables, chicken, cheese. Simple things, but chosen with care. There was a note taped to a container of homemade soup. "Heat and eat. Doctor's orders." Well, logistics coordinator's orders, but close enough. E. She heated the soup, ate it standing at her kitchen counter while watching the city lights come on like stars, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt less alone. The next week moved faster than Victoria expected. Silverton's SEC complaint was officially dismissed as baseless within 48 hours. The financial press started running stories about Meridian's turnaround, highlighting the efficiency improvements and praising Victoria's leadership. Stock prices ticked upward, shareholder confidence stabilized. But Marcus Patterson wasn't finished. On Wednesday afternoon, he showed up at Meridian Tower without an appointment, talking his way past security with charm and veiled threats. He appeared in Victoria's office like a bad penny, all-expensive suit and calculated smile. Victoria, looking well-rested. That's new. Marcus, looking desperate. That's consistent. She didn't stand, didn't offer him a seat. What do you want? To make you an offer. Personal, not professional. He sat anyway, crossed his legs. Silverton's prepared to offer you a very generous golden parachute. 20 million, full benefits, consulting contract if you want it. All you have to do is step down as CEO and recommend the board accept our acquisition offer. No. You didn't even let me finish. I don't need to. The answer is no. Marcus's smile thinned. Be reasonable, Victoria. You've had a good run, but it's over. We have enough shareholder proxies to force a vote. We have board members who are sympathetic to our position. We have the financial press questioning your judgment. This is your chance to walk away with dignity and a very comfortable retirement. I'm 42 years old, Marcus. I'm not retiring. Then you're going to lose everything, because we will take this company with or without your cooperation. The only question is whether you profit from it or not. He leaned forward. Think about it, Victoria. $20 million. No more stress, no more 18-hour days, no more fighting battles you can't win. You could actually have a life. For just a moment, Victoria let herself imagine it. Walking away, taking the money, disappearing to some beach somewhere. No more Silverton, no more hostile board members, no more exhausting fight to prove herself worthy of respect she'd already earned 1,000 times over. Then she thought about her employees, the thousands of people whose livelihoods depended on Meridian staying independent. She thought about Ethan, who'd built a new life here. She thought about the woman she'd been when she started this company, hungry and determined and absolutely unwilling to let anyone tell her what she could or couldn't do. Get out of my office, Marcus. Victoria, get out, now, before I call security and have you removed. He stood slowly, smoothed his tie. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. After he left, Victoria sat at her desk and let herself shake for exactly 30 seconds. Then she picked up her phone and called Ethan. Hey, he answered. Everything okay? Silverton just offered me $20 million to walk away. A pause. What did you say? I told them to get out of my office. Good. She could hear the smile in his voice. Because Ava would be devastated if you missed her play, and that's clearly more important than $20 million. Victoria laughed, surprised by how much lighter she felt. Clearly. Are you okay, though? Really? I don't know. I think so. Maybe. Can I see you? Not at the office, somewhere else. When? Now? Another pause, longer this time. I need to pick up Ava from school in 20 minutes, but you could come with me? We could get ice cream after? Victoria looked at her calendar, at the meeting stacked like dominoes through the rest of the afternoon. Then she texted David. Cancel everything. Personal emergency. I'll meet you at Riverside Elementary, she said. 20 minutes. The school parking lot was chaos. Parents in minivans and SUVs jockeying for position. Victoria pulled up in her Mercedes, feeling absurdly out of place among the family vehicles. She spotted Ethan's Honda and parked beside it. He was leaning against the driver's door, and when he saw her, his face lit up in a way that made her heart do something complicated. You came, he said. I came. They didn't touch, didn't do anything that would scandalous in a school pickup line, but something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, maybe. Acknowledgement of what was building between them, slow and inevitable as spring. Ava came running across the parking lot, backpack bouncing, and launched herself at Victoria with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for rock stars and ice cream. Victoria, you're here. Did you come to pick me up? Are you coming home with us? Did Daddy tell you about my play? I'm a tree, but not just any tree. I'm the tree that the main character sits under when she's sad, so it's a very important tree. Miss Peterson said so. Victoria caught her, held on, breathed in the scent of chalk dust and strawberry shampoo. Your dad told me, and I wouldn't miss it. They went for ice cream at a small shop that Ava insisted made the best chocolate chip cookie dough in the entire world. They sat at a sticky table by the window, and Ava talked nonstop about school and her upcoming play, and how Emma's hamster had babies, and now there were 5 Professor Whiskers, which was very confusing. Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she never did at business dinners or charity galas. Here, there were no expectations beyond enjoying ice cream and listening to an 8-year-old's stream of consciousness. Here, she could just be Victoria, not CEO Victoria or powerful Victoria or Victoria who had to have all the answers. Victoria, Ava said suddenly, very seriously, are you happy? The question caught her off guard. What? Are you happy? Because Daddy says you work too much and don't smile enough, and I told him that's silly because you smile all the time when you're with us, but he said that's different. That's your real smile, not your work smile. So I wanted to know if you're happy. Ethan looked mortified. Ava, we talked about this. It's okay, Victoria said softly. She looked at this child who somehow saw past all her carefully constructed walls, who asked the questions adults were too polite or too afraid to ask. I'm happier now than I've been in a long time. Because of you and your dad. You've reminded me what it feels like to have people in my life who care about me, not what I can do for them. Good, Ava said, satisfied. Because we care about you a lot. You're part of our family now. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, completely inappropriate for an ice cream shop on a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you, sweetheart. That means more to me than you know. Later, after they'd dropped Ava at Mrs. Chen's for her weekly piano lesson, Ethan and Victoria sat in his car in the grocery store parking lot, neither quite ready to separate. I'm sorry about the interrogation, Ethan said. She's been on this kick lately about making sure people are happy. I think it's because her teacher did a unit on emotions, and now she thinks she's a tiny therapist. She's wonderful. You've raised an incredible kid. I've tried, though most days I feel like I'm just stumbling through it and hoping for the best. He turned to face her. Victoria, can I ask you something? Of course. What are we doing here? I mean, I know what this looks like from the outside, CEO and employee, completely inappropriate, HR nightmare waiting to happen. But when I'm with you, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like something real, something worth risking complications for. Victoria's heart was hammering. They'd been dancing around this for weeks, acknowledging it without naming it. But here, in the fading afternoon light, in a parking lot that smelled like exhaust and possibility, the truth demanded to be spoken. I don't know what we're doing, she admitted. All I know is that before I met you, I was successful and accomplished and completely alone. I told myself that was enough, that achievement was its own reward. But then you changed my tire in the rain, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be seen as a person instead of a position. And now I can't imagine going back to the way things were before. So what do we do about it? I don't know. I'm your boss. There are rules, policies, potential conflicts of interest. If anyone found out, it could damage both our careers. It could give Silverton ammunition they could use against me. It could... Ethan reached across the center console and took her hand. Or it could be the best decision either of us ever made. Victoria looked at their joined hands, at the contrast between her manicured nails and his working calluses that hadn't quite faded yet. She thought about risk and reward, about playing it safe versus taking chances. She'd built her entire career on calculated risks, on seeing opportunities others missed and having the courage to seize them. This felt like the biggest risk of all. I care about you, she said quietly. More than I should, given the circumstances. More than is probably wise. I care about you too. Have since that night when you stayed to make sure I was okay, when you could have just called an ambulance and left. You saw me at my lowest, and you didn't turn away. That meant something. Where do we go from here? Honestly, I have no idea, but I know I don't want to pretend anymore. Don't want to act like this is just friendship when it's clearly become something more. He squeezed her hand gently. We don't have to have all the answers right now. We can take it slow, figure it out as we go. But I need to know if you're willing to try. Victoria thought about Marcus Patterson's offer, about walking away with $20 million and a clean slate. She thought about the safer choice, the easier path, the version of her life where she stayed in her lane and didn't risk her heart on a man who'd stumbled into her life by accident. Then she thought about Ava drawing her into family portraits, about Ethan bringing her soup when she was exhausted, about feeling less alone than she had in decades. "Yes," she said, "I'm willing to try." The smile that spread across Ethan's face was worth every complication that might follow. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently, and Victoria felt something shift in her chest, like a door opening to let light into a long, dark room. They sat there for a while longer, holding hands in a grocery store parking lot, and Victoria realized that for the first time in 20 years, she wasn't thinking about quarterly earnings or shareholder value or hostile takeovers. She was just thinking about being happy. The decision to try changed everything and nothing at the same time. At work, they maintained professional distance, careful not to give anyone reason to question their relationship. But after hours, in the spaces between obligation and expectation, they built something fragile and real. Victoria started leaving the office at reasonable hours, joining Ethan and Ava for dinner twice a week. She learned that Ava hated broccoli, but would eat it if you called it tiny trees and pretended they were in a forest. She discovered that Ethan sang off key in the kitchen while cooking and had a terrible habit of leaving cabinet doors open. She found herself laughing more, sleeping better, feeling like a person instead of just a position. But Silverton wasn't finished, and the fragile happiness Victoria had found was about to be tested in ways she hadn't anticipated. It started the Monday before Ava's school play. Victoria arrived at the office to find David waiting by her door, his expression grim. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Gerald Winters called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. He's moving to remove you as CEO. Victoria felt her stomach drop. "On what grounds?" "He's claiming a conflict of interest. Says you've been showing favoritism to certain employees, making personnel decisions based on personal relationships rather than merit." David's expression was carefully neutral. "Victoria, someone's been feeding him information about you and Ethan." The world tilted slightly. "What information?" "That you hired him under questionable circumstances. That you've been seen together outside of work. That you're in a romantic relationship with a subordinate, which violates company policy." David paused. "Is any of that true?" Victoria sank into her chair, her mind racing. The hire was legitimate. Jennifer Park made the decision based on merit. But yes, Ethan and I have become close. And yes, it's become more than friendship. Then we have a problem. Because if the board can prove a conflict of interest, they can remove you for cause. No severance, no golden parachute, just out. And with you gone, they'll accept Silverton's offer within a week. Victoria felt fury rise in her chest, hot and clarifying. "Marcus Patterson. He's been having me followed." "That would be my guess. The question is, what do we do about it?" She thought fast, weighing options and consequences. She could end things with Ethan, claim it was nothing serious, try to save her position by sacrificing the relationship. It would be the smart play, the safe play, the kind of ruthless calculation that had gotten her this far. But looking at David's concerned face, thinking about Ethan's gentle hands and Ava's bright smile, Victoria realized she was tired of sacrificing the things that mattered for the things that were supposed to matter. "Set up the meeting," she said, "and get me everything we have on Silverton's financial practices. If they want to play dirty, we'll play dirtier." The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation and strategy. Victoria worked with her legal team to document every decision she'd made regarding Ethan's hire, proving it was based on merit and approved by multiple people. She had Jennifer Park draft a detailed memo about the interview process and why Ethan was the best candidate. She compiled financial reports showing how his efficiency improvements had already saved the company millions. But she also did something else. She called in favors from old contacts in financial journalism and had them dig into Silverton Industries' own practices. What they found was damning, a pattern of acquiring companies, gutting them, and selling off the pieces, leaving thousands unemployed. Environmental violations swept under the rug, labor practices that skirted legal boundaries. Evidence of the same kind of personal relationships they were accusing Victoria of, except Silverton's executives faced no consequences. She worked through the night again, but this time Ethan didn't come to keep her company. They'd agreed it was too risky, that any appearance of impropriety now could hurt her case. But he texted her throughout the evening, small messages of support that kept her going. "Ava says you're the bravest person she knows." "I agree. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already won. because you chose to be human instead of just successful. I'm proud of you. Not CEO you, just you." Victoria read them over and over, drew strength from them, and walked into the emergency board meeting the next morning with her head high and her armor firmly in place. The 10 board members were already seated when she entered. Gerald Winters sat at the opposite end of the table, looking smug. Marcus Patterson stood against the wall, not officially part of the proceedings, but present as a vulture waiting for the kill. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Gerald began. "I've called this meeting because I've received information that suggests our CEO has engaged in behavior that violates company policy and compromises her ability to lead Meridian effectively." "That's a serious accusation, Gerald," said Margaret Chen. "What evidence do you have?" Gerald slid a folder across the table. "Photos of Ms. Hale with Ethan Cole, one of our employees, in various non-professional settings. Documentation showing she personally intervened to secure his hiring. Testimony from sources indicating they're in a romantic relationship." The board members passed the folder around, examining the contents. Victoria saw photos of her and Ethan at the ice cream shop, in the grocery store parking lot, outside his apartment building. Someone had been watching them for weeks. "These photos prove nothing inappropriate," Margaret said sharply. "They show two people spending time together. That's not a crime." "It is when one is the CEO and the other is her subordinate," Gerald countered. "It creates a conflict of interest. It opens the company to liability, and it demonstrates a lack of judgment that calls into question her fitness to lead." "My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run this company," Victoria said, her voice steady. "Your personal life affects all of us when it violates company policy and puts us at risk," Gerald shot back. "I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove Victoria Hale as CEO, effective immediately." "I'd like to speak before any vote is taken," Victoria said. "This isn't a trial, Victoria. We don't need to hear your defense." "You'll hear it anyway." Victoria stood, moved to the head of the table. "Yes, I've become close with Ethan Cole, but that relationship began after he was hired, not before. His hire was approved by our director of logistics based solely on merit. If you doubt that, I have documentation from Jennifer Park detailing the entire interview process and why he was the superior candidate." She pulled out the memo, slid it across the table. "Since joining Meridian, Mr. Cole has identified efficiency improvements that have saved this company over $8 million in operational costs. His work has been exemplary. Promoting him or working with him wasn't favoritism. It was good business." "That doesn't address the personal relationship," Gerald said. "No, it doesn't. Because my personal relationships are exactly that, personal. I'm not married to this company, Gerald. I don't owe it my entire life, my every waking moment, my right to care about someone outside these walls." Victoria's voice grew stronger. "But since we're discussing conflicts of interest and questionable judgment, let's talk about why this meeting was really called." She pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. "Marcus Patterson and Silverton Industries have been conducting a coordinated campaign to undermine my leadership and force a takeover. They've filed baseless complaints, leaked misleading information to the press, and apparently hired private investigators to follow me around the city. All in service of acquiring Meridian so they can do to us what they've done to a dozen other companies. Strip the assets, fire the employees, and walk away with a profit while thousands of people lose their livelihoods." She opened the folder, revealing financial documents and news clippings. "Silverton has a history of predatory acquisitions. They bought Harmon Manufacturing 2 years ago, promised to preserve jobs, then laid off 80% of the workforce within 6 months. They acquired Denison Tech, sold off the patents, and shuttered the company entirely. They have environmental violations in 4 states and pending lawsuits for labor practices that should make every person in this room sick." Victoria locked eyes with Gerald. "So yes, I developed feelings for someone who works at this company, but I'm not the one with a judgment problem. The judgment problem belongs to anyone who thinks selling Meridian to these people is in our best interest." The room fell silent. Marcus Patterson's face had gone red, his jaw clenched tight. Gerald looked less confident than he had 5 minutes ago. Margaret Chen picked up the documents, started reading. "Where did you get this information?" "Public records, mostly. Financial disclosures, court documents, news reports. It's all there if you bother to look." Victoria returned to her seat. I've spent 20 years building this company. I've made sacrifices, worked impossible hours, put Meridian above everything else in my life. But recently I realized that approach was making me a worse leader, not a better one. Because I was so focused on success that I forgot about the human element, the people who make this company run, who trust us to do right by them. She paused, let that sink in. Ethan Cole reminded me what it means to care about people more than profit, to see someone who needs help and offer it without calculating the return on investment, to build something that matters, not just something that makes money. Those aren't weaknesses in a leader. Those are strengths. And if this board disagrees, if you think being a decent human being is incompatible with being CEO, then maybe I'm in the wrong company. Thomas Rodriguez spoke up for the first time. I've reviewed the documentation on Mr. Cole's hire. It's clear he was selected based on qualifications. I've also reviewed his work product, and it's exemplary. I see no evidence of favoritism or conflict of interest in a professional context. But the personal relationship, Gerald started, is between two consenting adults, Margaret interrupted, neither of whom is married, neither of whom has shown any evidence of using their positions inappropriately. Yes, it creates potential complications, but nothing I've seen suggests it's affected Victoria's judgment or performance as CEO. I disagree, Gerald said, and I'm calling for a vote. All in favor of removing Victoria Hale as CEO. 3 hands went up, Gerald's and 2 others who'd always been skeptical of Victoria's leadership. All opposed? 7 hands, including Margaret's and Thomas's. Gerald's face darkened. This isn't over, Victoria. Yes, it is, she said quietly, because I'm also calling for a vote. I move that we reject Silverton Industries' acquisition offer and any future overtures from them, and that we issue a public statement making our position clear. All in favor? The same 7 hands went up. Marcus Patterson pushed off the wall, his composure cracking. You're making a mistake. Silverton was offering you a way out, a graceful exit. Now you've made this personal. You made it personal when you had me followed, Victoria said. When you tried to destroy my reputation to get what you want. This company isn't for sale, Marcus. Not to Silverton, not to anyone. Tell your client to move on. He left without another word, Gerald following in his wake. The other board members filed out more slowly, some offering Victoria nods of support, others avoiding her gaze entirely. When the room cleared, Margaret Chen remained. That was impressive and risky. I know. You also just made enemies of 3 board members and one of the most aggressive corporate raiders in the industry. I know that too. Margaret smiled slightly. Good. Just wanted to make sure you understood what you were getting into. She stood, gathered her papers. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Both professionally and personally. Life's too short to spend it alone at the top. After she left, Victoria sat in the empty conference room and let herself shake. She'd won. But it had been close. Too close. And the cost was now clear. She'd have to be perfect going forward, give her critics no ammunition, prove every day that her personal life didn't compromise her professional judgment. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. I heard about the vote. Are you okay? She stepped into the hallway, found a quiet corner. I'm still CEO for now. Victoria, I'm sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't... Stop. This is not your fault. This is Silverton being desperate and Gerald being vindictive. You didn't do anything wrong. Maybe I should resign, remove the conflict of interest. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. No, Ethan, you earned your position. You're doing incredible work. I won't let them force you out. But if keeping me puts your job at risk, then I'll deal with it. But I'm not sacrificing you to save my career. That's not who I want to be anymore. She paused. Are we still on for Ava's play tonight? A long silence, then Ethan's voice, rough with emotion. You're still coming. After everything that just happened, I told her I'd be there. I'm not breaking that promise. Victoria checked her watch. What time does it start? 7. But Victoria, if you need to, I'll be there at 6:30. Save me a seat. That evening, Victoria left the office at 5:30, an almost unheard of departure time. She drove to Riverside Elementary, parked among the minivans and SUVs, and found Ethan waiting by the entrance. He looked nervous, dressed in slacks and a button-down, holding a bouquet of flowers that were clearly meant for Ava. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey yourself." Victoria wanted to hug him, to feel his arms around her after the brutal day, but they were in public, at his daughter's school, and the scrutiny on their relationship had never been higher. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said. "I know today was hell. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Ava's important. This is important." They found seats in the crowded auditorium, surrounded by parents and siblings and grandparents all there to watch their kids perform. Victoria felt conspicuous in her work clothes, still dressed like a CEO while everyone else wore jeans and casual sweaters. But when the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, all of that fell away. The play was a children's adaptation of a fairy tale, something about a princess who learned that kindness mattered more than crowns. Ava appeared in the second scene, standing stage left in a brown costume decorated with paper leaves, her arms spread wide to represent branches. She was utterly committed to her role as a tree, standing perfectly still while other children danced around her. When the princess sat beneath her branches to cry, Ava even rustled her leaves sympathetically. It was absurd and adorable and perfect. Ethan leaned close to whisper, "She practiced that leaf rustle for 2 weeks." Victoria found herself smiling, genuinely and completely. After everything, the board meeting, the threats, the photos, the vote, this moment of pure innocence felt like medicine. The play ended to enthusiastic applause. Children took their bows, beaming at the crowd. Ava found them in the audience and waved so hard she nearly fell over. Afterward, they waited in the lobby while Ava changed out of her costume. Other parents milled around, congratulating their children, taking photos. Victoria noticed some of them glancing her way, whispering. She wondered if they knew who she was, if word had spread about the board meeting, if her relationship with Ethan was becoming public knowledge. Then Ava burst through the doors, still wearing part of her tree costume, and launched herself at Ethan. "Did you see? Did you see me rustle my leaves?" "You were the best tree I've ever seen," Ethan said, hugging her tight. "The most important tree in the whole play." "Victoria, did you see?" "I saw everything. You were wonderful, sweetheart." Ava turned to her, suddenly shy. "Did I really do okay?" Victoria knelt down to her eye level. "You were perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I'm so proud of you." Ava threw her arms around Victoria's neck, and something in Victoria's chest cracked open completely. This child, who barely knew her 3 months ago, who had every reason to be wary of the wealthy woman dating her father, hugged her like she was family, like she belonged. "I'm so glad you came," Ava whispered. "I was worried you wouldn't. Emma's mom said you're probably too busy and important to come to kid stuff." Victoria pulled back, looked Ava in the eyes. "I will never be too busy or too important for you. Understand? You matter more than any meeting or business deal. You always will." When they stood, Victoria found Ethan watching them with an expression that made her heart stutter. Love, clear and unguarded, written across his face. They went for pizza after, the three of them squeezed into a booth at the same place they'd had their first dinner together. Ava talked non-stop about the play, about how Jason forgot his lines and how the cardboard castle nearly fell over and how Miss Peterson said she did an excellent job. "Can we do this every week?" Ava asked suddenly. "Pizza and hanging out, like a real family?" Ethan and Victoria exchanged glances, an entire conversation happening in that look. "Would you like that?" Victoria asked carefully. "Me being around more?" "I already told you, you're part of our family now," Ava said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Families spend time together, so yeah, I'd like that a lot." Later, after they'd dropped Ava at home and she'd gone to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat on his couch in the quiet apartment. The space between them felt charged with everything unsaid. "I'm sorry about today," Ethan said, "about putting you in that position. You didn't put me anywhere. I chose this. I chose you." Victoria took his hand. "And I'd make the same choice again. Even if it costs you the company?" "Even then." She turned to face him fully. "For 20 years, I thought success meant sacrifice, that I had to give up everything personal to be professional. But you've shown me that's not true, that being a good leader and being a good person aren't mutually exclusive. that caring about people doesn't make me weak. You were never weak, Victoria. Maybe not, but I was alone and lonely and so focused on winning that I forgot why winning mattered in the first place. She squeezed his hand. You and Ava, you've reminded me. You've given me something worth fighting for beyond quarterly earnings and shareholder value. Ethan lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. I love you. I know it's too soon to say that, and it's complicated given everything, but I need you to know. I love you, Victoria. Not CEO Victoria, just you. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, the happy kind this time. I love you too, both of you. You've become my family, and I didn't even realize how much I needed one until I had you. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his, breathing him in. What happens now? Ethan asked. Now we figure it out together. The company, the relationship, all of it. We stop hiding, stop apologizing for caring about each other. We be honest about what we are, and let people deal with it. Victoria pulled back to look at him. That's not going to be easy. There will be complications, criticism, people who think it's inappropriate. Are you ready for that? I don't know. But I know I'm ready to try. With you. They sat together for a long time, holding hands in the quiet apartment, building plans for a future that included both professional success and personal happiness. For the first time in Victoria's adult life, she wasn't approaching a challenge alone. The next morning, Victoria called David into her office first thing. I need you to draft a memo, she said. A disclosure to the board about my relationship with Ethan Cole. Make it clear that it developed after his hire, that all professional decisions regarding him have been made by other supervisors to avoid conflict of interest, and that we're taking appropriate steps to ensure transparency going forward. David raised his eyebrows. You're going public with it? I'm being honest about it. There's a difference. Victoria leaned back in her chair. We're not hiding anymore. If people have a problem with it, they can address it directly instead of whispering in corners. That's brave and risky. Story of my life lately. The memo went out that afternoon. The reaction was mixed. Some board members expressed concern, others simply acknowledged the disclosure. But the whispering stopped, the uncertainty evaporated. Victoria had named the elephant in the room, and in doing so had taken away its power. Over the following weeks, Meridian continued to improve. Ethan's efficiency initiatives rolled out across all distribution centers, saving money and improving delivery times. Stock prices climbed, shareholder confidence returned. Silverton Industries, faced with a united board and a reinvigorated company, quietly withdrew their acquisition attempt. Marcus Patterson sent one final message, delivered through his assistant. You won this round, Victoria. Enjoy it while it lasts. Victoria deleted it without responding. She had more important things to focus on. 3 months after the board vote, on a Saturday morning in February, Victoria woke up in her penthouse to the smell of coffee and bacon. She padded into the kitchen to find Ethan at the stove, Ava sitting at the counter doing homework. They'd started staying over on weekends, this makeshift family that had formed from a chance encounter on a rainy night. Ava had claimed the guest room as her own, decorating it with drawings and stuffed animals. Ethan had gradually moved his things in, his presence making the too-big apartment finally feel like a home. Morning, Victoria said, kissing the top of Ava's head, then moving to Ethan and kissing him properly. Gross, Ava said without looking up from her math worksheet, but she was smiling. Coffee's fresh, Ethan said, then. And I made extra bacon because someone insisted she needed protein for brain power. I do need protein, Ava insisted. Miss Peterson said so. Victoria poured coffee, settled onto a stool beside Ava. What are you working on? Fractions. They're annoying. Want help? For the next 20 minutes, they worked through the problems together while Ethan cooked breakfast. It was ordinary and domestic, and perfect in ways Victoria never could have imagined wanting. This was what she'd been missing. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but quiet Saturday mornings with people who loved her. After breakfast, Ava announced she needed to go to Emma's house to work on a science project. Can you drive me? She asked Ethan. Actually, Victoria said, surprising herself. I can take you, if that's okay. Ava's face lit up. Really? Really, I don't have any meetings today. I'd like to spend time with you. The drive to Emma's house took 15 minutes. Ava talked the entire way, filling Victoria in on the science project, the latest school drama, her plans for her upcoming birthday party. Victoria, she said as they pulled up to Emma's house, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you going to marry my daddy? Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's a big question, sweetheart. I know, but I want to know. Because if you are, then you'd be my mom. Well, not my real mom, but like my other mom. And I think that would be nice. Victoria turned off the engine, twisted in her seat to look at this wise, wonderful child. Would you be okay with that? If your dad and I got married someday? Are you kidding? It would be the best thing ever. Ava grinned. You make him happy, like really happy, not fake happy. And you make me happy too. So yeah, I'd be super okay with it. Well, your dad hasn't asked me yet, but if he does, you'll be the first to know. Deal? Deal. Ava hugged her quickly, then grabbed her backpack. Thanks for the ride. Love you. She was out of the car before Victoria could respond, bounding toward Emma's front door. But the words echoed in the car after she left, casual and matter-of-fact and absolutely transformative. Love you. Victoria drove back to the penthouse with tears streaming down her face, the happy kind that came from having something you never knew you needed. Ethan was cleaning up from breakfast when she returned. He took one look at her face and set down the dish towel. What happened? Is Ava okay? She's fine. She's perfect. Victoria moved into his arms, held on tight. She said she loves me. Ethan's arms tightened around her. Of course she does. We both do. I know, but hearing her say it, so casual and easy, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Victoria pulled back to look at him. Ethan, I've spent my whole adult life building a company, chasing success, trying to prove I was worthy of respect and recognition. But nothing I've accomplished, none of the money or power or prestige, has ever made me feel the way I felt when your daughter said she loves me. She means it, you know. She's been asking when you're going to move in permanently, when we're all going to be a real family. What did you tell her? Ethan took her hand, led her to the couch where they'd spent so many evenings talking and planning and building this unexpected life together. I told her that was up to the adults to figure out. But Victoria, I need to know something. Is this what you want? Not just dating, not just spending weekends together, but really committing to this. To us. To being a family. Victoria thought about her life before that rainy night, the empty penthouse, the endless work hours, the success that felt hollow because there was no one to share it with. Then she thought about Saturday morning breakfasts and school plays and homework help and the way Ava drew her into family portraits. Yes, she said, this is exactly what I want. Ethan smiled, that genuine expression that still had the power to make her heart skip. Good. Because Ava's already planning the wedding. Apparently there need to be horses involved. I'm not sure why, but she's very insistent. Victoria laughed, imagining it. Horses it is then. So we're doing this? Really doing this? We're really doing this. Ethan kissed her, deep and sweet, a promise of all the ordinary extraordinariness to come. When they pulled apart, Victoria felt more certain than she ever had closing a business deal or winning a board vote. 6 months later, on a perfect autumn day almost exactly a year after Victoria's tire had blown on that rainy night, they got married in a small ceremony in the gardens behind Meridian Tower. Ava served as flower girl, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself and carrying a basket of petals that she scattered with theatrical flair. The guest list was small. David and his husband, Jennifer Park, and her family, Margaret Chen and Thomas Rodriguez from the board, Mrs. Chen from the old apartment building, Emma and her parents, and a handful of other people who actually mattered to them. No business contacts, no networking opportunities, just the people they loved. Victoria wore a simple dress, elegant and understated. Ethan wore a suit that actually fit, his hair slightly messy in the way that made him look approachable instead of polished. When he saw her walking down the makeshift aisle, his eyes filled with tears. "You look beautiful," he whispered when she reached him. "You clean up pretty well yourself." They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising not just love and fidelity, but partnership and honesty and the courage to keep choosing each other even when it was complicated. When the officiant pronounced them married, Ava cheered so loudly that everyone laughed. At the reception, a casual affair with good food and better company, Victoria found herself standing by the windows overlooking the city, watching the sun set over buildings she'd once thought were her entire world. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. Happy? Incredibly. You? More than I ever thought possible. He rested his chin on her shoulder. Who would have thought a year ago that a blown tire would lead to this? Best breakdown I ever had. They stood together, watching their guests mingle and laugh, watching Ava demonstrate her tree roll from the school play to anyone who would watch. This was success, Victoria realized. Not the corner office or the stock price or the board votes, though those mattered too. Success was building a life that felt full instead of empty, that included people who loved you for who you were instead of what you could do for them. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She almost ignored it, but old habits died hard. It was a message from Marcus Patterson, his first contact in months. Congratulations on your marriage. Looks like you got your happy ending after all. Just remember, the business world doesn't care about happy endings. See you in the boardroom. MP. Victoria showed it to Ethan, who frowned. Still trying to get under your skin. Let him try. Victoria deleted the message, turned her phone off completely. I stopped caring about Marcus Patterson's opinion about 6 months ago. He can posture all he wants. Meridian's stronger than ever, and I'm stronger than I've ever been, because I'm not fighting alone anymore. No, you're not. Ethan turned her to face him. You've got me. You've got Ava. You've got a whole life outside of those boardrooms. Best decision I ever made, stopping to help a stranger in the rain. Second best, Ethan corrected. Best decision was staying the night to make sure I was okay. That's when I knew you were different. Different how? Different as in actually caring about people more than profit. Different as in seeing someone at their lowest and not turning away. Different as in being the kind of person who becomes family to a kid who barely knew you. Ava appeared at Victoria's elbow, tugging on her dress. Victoria, Emma wants to know if we're really going to have horses at our house. No horses, sweetheart. We talked about this. But you said if I wanted horses at the wedding. I said we'd think about it. Thinking about it and doing it are two different things. Ava sighed dramatically. Fine, but can we at least get a dog? Victoria looked at Ethan, who shrugged with a smile that said, your call. She thought about her pristine penthouse with its white carpets and expensive furniture, about how much of her old life she'd already changed to make room for this new one. We'll talk about it, she said. But I'm not promising anything. That's not a no. Ava hugged her quickly, then ran back to Emma to report this development. You realize she's going to wear you down until you say yes, Ethan said. I'm counting on it. I need to practice saying yes to things that matter more than I practice saying no. As the evening wore on and the celebration continued, Victoria found herself surrounded by warmth and laughter and love. She danced with Ethan, slow and close, then let Ava stand on her feet for a spin around the floor. She toasted with Margaret Chen, who'd become more friend than colleague. She listened to David's embarrassing best man speech and Jennifer Park's surprisingly touching maid of honor remarks. When the party finally wound down and the last guest departed, it was just the three of them, Victoria, Ethan, and Ava, standing in the gardens as city lights blinked on like stars. Can I tell you guys something? Ava said, suddenly serious. Anything, Victoria said, kneeling down to her level. I used to wish really hard for a family, like every birthday candle and every shooting star I'd wish for us to be complete again. And then you came, and now we are. So thank you for making my wish come true. Victoria felt tears slip down her cheeks, didn't bother to wipe them away. Thank you for letting me be part of it, for drawing me into your family portraits and saving me garlic bread and asking the hard questions about whether I was happy. You helped me find something I didn't even know I'd lost. Ava hugged her tight, and Ethan wrapped his arms around both of them, and they stood there in the twilight as a complete family, built not from blood or obligation, but from choice and kindness and the courage to let people in. Victoria had started this journey as a CEO who'd sacrificed everything for success. She was ending it as a woman who'd learned that success without connection was just loneliness dressed up in expensive suits. She'd built an empire, yes, but more importantly, she'd built a home, a family, a life that felt full in all the ways that actually mattered. And it had all started with a simple act of compassion on a rainy night, when an exhausted man had stopped to help a stranger, and that stranger had stayed to make sure he was okay. Two people who had nothing in common except kindness, who'd found in each other exactly what they'd been missing. Later that night, in the penthouse that finally felt like a home, Victoria tucked Ava into bed in what was now officially her room. "Victoria?" Ava said sleepily. "Can I call you Mom?" Victoria's breath caught. "Do you want to?" "Yeah, because that's what you are. Not my first mom, but my other mom. The one who chose to love me." "Then yes, sweetheart. You can call me Mom." Ava smiled, already drifting off to sleep. "Okay. Good night, Mom." "Good night, baby." Victoria found Ethan waiting in their bedroom, this space they'd made together from his practical sensibility and her unexpected domesticity. He pulled her into his arms, and they stood at the window looking out at the city that had witnessed their entire journey. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one." Victoria turned in his embrace, looked up at the man who'd changed everything just by being exactly who he was. "I thought I knew what I wanted from life. Turned out I had no idea. But you showed me. You and Ava showed me what actually matters." "We showed each other," Ethan said, "because you taught me that giving up wasn't the same as settling, that there were people in the world who'd see your worth even when you couldn't see it yourself. That kindness wasn't weakness and caring wasn't stupid." They kissed in the quiet of their bedroom, and Victoria thought about all the roads that had led them here. The late nights and early mornings, the board meetings and school plays, the moments of doubt and fear, and the bigger moments of hope and joy. All of it had been necessary, every step of the journey leading them exactly where they needed to be. Tomorrow, she'd go back to being CEO, to fighting battles and making decisions, and proving herself worthy of the position she'd fought so hard to keep. But tonight, she was just Victoria. Wife, mother, partner, friend. A woman who'd learned that you could have it all, not by sacrificing pieces of yourself, but by making room for the parts that mattered most. She'd changed a stranger's tire in the rain and received far more than she'd given. She'd opened her door to someone in need and found her way home. She'd chosen love over loneliness, connection over isolation, and in doing so, had discovered the kind of success that couldn't be measured in quarterly earnings or stock prices. She'd found family, and that Victoria now understood was worth more than any empire she could ever build. The city sparkled below them, full of other stories, other chances, other strangers who might stop to help each other in the rain. Victoria sent a silent wish into the night for all of them, hoping they'd find what she'd found, that the best things in life came not from closing yourself off, but from opening your heart, even when it was risky, even when it was scary, even when it changed absolutely everything. Because sometimes the best breakdown you ever had was the one that led you home.